Do you think you have to be an artist in order to create 3D relief models for your CNC projects? You're wrong. Believe it or else. Hi, I'm Michael Tyler and welcome to this session of the Vectric 2020 Worldwide User Group. Occasionally, I've heard people say, I wish I could create my own models, but I don't have an artistic bone in my body. If that's you, then stay tuned for the rest of this video, because today I'm going to prove to you that you can easily make many types of 3D relief models without a lot of fuss and without any artistic ability whatsoever. To demonstrate the simple modeling techniques, I'll show you the steps for creating a replica of an ancient fossilized Megladon shark tooth. Are you ready? Here we go.
Okay, I've started up an instance of Aspire 10.5 and let's go ahead and make a Megladon shark tooth. So I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to press down Shift before I click on Create New File, and that's so that I can access higher resolutions. You know, normally you see 3 choices: standard, high, very high, but I'm going to go ahead and select extremely high for this model. I'm going to make the job size 9 inches wide and 11 inches tall and click OK. So I'm going to let the software help me out a little bit making this shark tooth model. And one of the things I'm going to start with is importing a bitmap of a photo of a shark tooth. And you can see here I've got several that I found on the internet, photos of shark tooth, but I lucked out and I found a couple that have a completely black or dark background. So I'm going to import one of those. And I've got the tracing tool here, Trace Bitmap. Click on that and you can see this is a color photo, so it automatically comes up with the colors. I can reduce those colors down because I really only need to select the darkest color, which is this one here, because all I want really is just the outline of the shark tooth. Now I could have traced this manually, but this way I'll let the software do all the heavy lifting. So I'm going to click Preview, and it looks like I've got a pretty decent outline of the shark tooth there, so I'll go ahead and apply and click Close. I'm going to temporarily turn off this bitmap layer just to see what we have here for the trace. You can see it's giving me an outline of the shark tooth, but I've also got some problems here. I've got a lot of artifacts that I don't want at all. I've got the outline of the actual bitmap itself. Of course, I want to eliminate that, so I'm going to select this, and you see it's all grouped together because it all turned pink all at once. So I'm going to press the letter U on the keyboard to ungroup all of these vectors. They're grouped now because they're all pink. Hit ungroup for those vectors, and now they're all independent from each other. So I'm going to delete all of the vectors I don't want. So all these artifacts here, I can just lasso select the artifacts, hit delete on the keyboard, lasso select the rest of these artifacts, hit delete on the keyboard, and that gets rid of the unwanted vectors. So now I'm just going to reduce the number of nodes. I'm going to press the letter N on the keyboard, and that will show us all these nodes that we have here. So I'm going to reduce those using this tool here called the Curve Fit tool, and I'm selecting Bezier curves. I'm going to hit preview, and you'll see that the nodes have been reduced significantly. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. Click preview, and that deletes a lot of those nodes again. Click OK. I'm going to turn on that bitmap layer and see how the parameter outline is looking. Now I can select the bitmap and select object properties from this menu here, and I can fade that bitmap in and out just to make it a little easier for me to see that outline. So I'm going to fade that out quite a bit, and that allows me to see the outline a little bit clearer. So I've got a lot of indentations here that I really don't need, so I'm going to zoom in, hover over the nodes that I don't want, and hit the D key on the keyboard to delete them. Now I can also select more than one at a time and hit letter D, and that deletes those nodes as well. So I'm just going through here and seeing if there's any areas that I need to adjust. Here's an area here. I do not want this vector to go in like that, so I can hover over the span, this vector span, and hit the letter D on the keyboard and delete that. Here's another one. I'll delete that, and we'll get rid of this. I'll just right click, go back in the selection arrow, select this piece here, and delete key on the keyboard deletes it. Now select this vector and go over here and select the join the vectors with a smooth curve, and that gives me that closed vector that I'm after again. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and keep this outline here. And we'll go to the next step where I'm going to create a thin texture model from this bitmap itself. That will be used as an overlay for a shape that's sitting underneath that represents the shark tooth shape. Okay, so let's make a model from this bitmap. We can go up to the model menu here and select the create component from bitmap. Okay, let's go to our 3D view, and this is a result of that. And we can go into the model menu, the component tree, and I want to check the shape height. Right now it's about almost 2/10 of an inch. I'm just going to make it 1/10 of an inch, 0.1, and click close. And I also want to rename this to, say, texture. I'll put tooth texture. Okay. And I want to smooth this a little bit, just giving it a global smooth. So that will smooth everything. And I'm just going to adjust this slider here to take a look at how much it's going to smooth. So I want to retain a great deal of this texture, but I'm smoothing it over a bit. I definitely want to take and make sure that these striations in the tooth are preserved, so I don't want to smooth it too much and fill those in. That looks about right. Let me just move this slider a little bit more to the right. That smooths it more, and I'll move it a little over to the left. That smooths it less. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it right about there. That looks good, and I'll click OK. All right, so that gives us the texture that we need for the overlay that goes on top of the underlying shape that we'll create next. Okay, let's go back to our 2D view, and I'll go ahead and turn off the visibility of this model and also the bitmap layer. Okay, so we just have the vector perimeter outline of the tooth, and I want to offset this. I'll double click in this modeling window and go to offset, and I'm going to offset that by 1/16 of an inch. 1/16 equals, that calculates that to a decimal for us. Offset and close. Now I want to reduce the number of nodes on this outline because I want to have a smoother outline than that, and we'll go ahead and reduce that. Click OK. Going to do it again, reduce it some more, one more time, do it again. That's probably enough. Okay, so I've got a 1/16 inch perimeter around there, and that's just to give me a little extra room to have that texture carve and to create the model here. Now I want to make this a little bit smoother here so that it doesn't affect my model, because I'm going to use the shape create, and I don't want that to affect the model contours too much. So I'm taking out some of this irregularity here. I think I'll just take this out just a little bit and bring this out just a tad. Okay, that gives us a little smoother profile there. Okay, so I'll select this and we'll go into the modeling tools, and we're going to use the create shape. And I'm going to use this new smooth profile feature. I'm going to give it a base height of 1/32 of an inch. 1/32 equals, and I'm going to scale that to let's say 0.5 to begin with. And I'll go to our 3D view so I can see what's happening here. Apply. All right, it just so happens that this new shape profile, the smooth profile, is just about perfect for making this shark tooth because it has that hump in the middle and then fades out either side. Let me just label this underlying shape and close. And let me turn off the texture. So this is just the underlying shape. Now you see where these lumps are right here? That's due to the perimeter being a little bit pulled out here and pulled in here, and that is what creates these lumps. So I smooth it out a little bit. That won't matter. I can smooth this with sculpting tools. So I'll go into the sculpting tools real quick, zoom in with my scroll wheel, double click to select it, select the sculpting tools, smooth, and I'll just go ahead and up that strength just a little bit and just smooth that down. That doesn't matter too much here because I'm planning on using another model in this area, but I just want to initially get that smoothed a little bit. I can select the lower function for smooth, so it'll bring that high spot down a little bit. And I'm just rubbing over it with the mouse. Now, because I've got this set at the extremely high resolution, it does affect the way that the sculpting tools react with the model. There's a lot more pixels there it's got to process when you're at these higher resolutions. If I had a standard or a very high resolution, which is lower than the extremely high resolution, then the sculpting actually responds differently and quicker than when you're using it with using sculpting tools with the higher resolution settings. Okay, I think that's good enough, and we'll go ahead and click OK. All right, so that gives us our basic underlying shape. I'll turn back on the texture, and you can see when I twiddle this that it's starting to look a lot like a shark tooth. Okay, going back to our 2D view, I want to trim away this background from our texture model. So I've turned off the underlying shape and I've got the texture model, and I'll select this outer vector. That was our 16th inch offset. Holding down shift, I'll select that, tooth texture model. Then I go up to here and select the clear area of selected component outside selected vectors. So that's going to delete anything outside of that line. And I click on that once, and that's gone. I'll turn back on our underlying shape, and now we have the model without the background. Okay, let's look at fattening up this top part here. I'm happy with the tooth configuration and shape right here, but the top part, I want to fatten that up a little bit. So go back into the 2D view, and I'm going to select this vector that outlines the model here, and I'm going to make a copy of it. So I'm going to right click, copy to layer, new layer. I'm going to call this layer red and select the color red. And so now we've got this copy. Go into node editing mode, hit N on the keyboard, and what I want to do is run this down here to this portion of the tooth. So I'm going to go ahead and hover over this span, hit D to delete it, go to the other side, zoom in, D to delete that span. We no longer need this bottom vector. And then here I'm going to select that red vector and join that with a smooth curve. Join the vectors with a smooth curve. And hit N on the keyboard again. Insert a node by clicking I on the keyboard. Bring this down. And I'm going to hit I here to bring in another node. Hit I here to bring in another node. And I'm just adjusting this to more closely conform to this shape here. I add another node here. And let's see if we can tweak this a little bit. Another node here. Just bring that down a little bit. And another node here. And I'll delete this node. I don't need that one. Okay, that's close enough. So I'm going to go ahead and then create a new model for this top part to fatten that up. Modeling tools, I'll use the standard curve profile shape. And let's set a height of, well, let's try 0.25. Call this top tooth. Click apply. And let's take a look at the 3D view. Okay, so I've fattened that up a little bit. I want to have a little bit fatter on the top there. So a couple ways I can do that. I'm going to put 0.3, just increase that height a little bit. And go back into my 2D view and use this tilt option. Click on set. And I want it to tilt from here to the top of these V-shaped areas there. I've got a 10% tilt. Let's see what that looks like in the 3D view. Obviously that's way too much, so I'm going to cut that down. Let's say 5%. Let's see what that looks like. And we'll reduce that down again to, let's say, just under 3. Okay, I think that is probably going to do it. So I'll go ahead and close this. And then we'll look at tweaking this a little bit to blend in a bit better. Taking a look at this, I want to fill in a little bit more in this area here and also thicken up this edge just a bit. So I'm going to accomplish that by creating a copy of this top tooth model, and I'll make a duplicate there and turn off the tooth texture temporarily. Okay, so that's raised that up. I'm going to right click this original top tooth and set the combine mode to merge. That will lower this. Let me turn off the duplicate so you can see what's happening, how it's relating to the underlying shape. So you see it's sunken in, it's merged with that underlying shape. Okay, now let me turn on the copy of that top tooth model. And at this point, I'm going to create a new model by clicking on this Create Component from Visible Model. And I'll select Show Only This. It turns everything else off. And I'm going to sculpt this, just smooth it out just a little bit here. Let me up the strength all the way. Okay, happy with that. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And let me turn on the tooth texture. See what that looks like now. Okay, I don't like this strong vertical edge here, so what I'm going to do is to sculpt down these edges so that it has more of a rounded effect. So let me put that back in the Z view. Go back into selecting the copy of visible model, select the Sculpt tool, and I'm going to use this feature lower. And I go around these edges here. And you can see, if I twiddle this, you can see how it's softening those sharp edges and bringing that down a little bit more of a rounded effect. So I'm going to continue sculpting that all the way around until I get that rounded effect all the way around those vertical edges. Okay, this is about 2 minutes of sculpting. And so I'm just about to finish that up. I'm back in the normal mode for the smooth. And I'm just going to smooth out some of these creases here. I've already rounded over, as you can see, the edges. I blended this a little bit more as well. And apply a smooth there. Okay, I think that's done. Click OK. And let's go back into the Z view, zoom in a little bit, turn back on the tooth texture, and that looks really good. So I've got more of a rounded edge on these top corners of the tooth, which is what I wanted. Brought this down a little bit on these sides, filled in this area here. So I'm going to create a new level. First of all, I'll rename this level. I'll put original models. Enter. And I'll create a new level and label this finished model. So I'm going to take this copy of visible model and bring it up here to the finished model level. And I also want to create a copy of this, duplicate, and bring this up here. And I'm going to turn off the visibility of the original models and just squish that down. Now I've got all the parts of the models visible, my sculpted copy and the tooth texture. And I'm going to use the Create Component from Visible Model again. And I will turn off visibility of the tooth texture, and all we're left with is the final copy of that model. So I'm going to rename that final model. And I don't really need these anymore, so I can delete those. Okay. Now we're going to be cutting this out of 3/4 inch material, so I can see that this is probably going to exceed that thickness. So I'm going to go into the wrench tool, the properties tool, and check my shape height. I'm going to set that at 0.75 inches to begin with, just to see how that looks, and close. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, if you want to get a quick idea what this will look like, we're going to carve 2 of these and then glue them together. Instead of setting this job up as a 2-sided model, which you could do, I'm just going to carve a copy of this, 2 copies of this on a single board, and then separate them from the board and glue them together. So if you want to see what this looks like put together, you can use this tool to export visible model as an STL file. So I can use that and get a visual representation of what that'll look like when it's glued together. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, it's going to take a little while to process because I've got a high resolution, but the key here is to select this option, close with inverted front. So that's going to make a copy of this on the back side. So once you've selected that, just click triangulate and let that cook a little bit. Okay, and I'll click the view from the side there. So you can see this is what it'll look like when it's glued together if we were viewing from the edge. Now I can twiddle this just like any other model. It's just because this high resolution, it's going to have a slight delay there. But you can see this is what it's going to look like when it's glued together. We've got a nice thick portion here, and since we know that this is 3/4 of an inch on either side, the 2 models together, when they're glued together, it'll be a total maximum thickness somewhere in this model, maximum thickness of 1.5 inches. Okay, so that's just a quick way to visualize what it'll look like when glued together. Now that we have the final model, I've got a couple of things I just want to go over quickly. Remember, I have this flange that's just a thin flange underneath that model, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. I could go in here in the 2D view and select this vector and the model and then trim that flange off, but I'm not going to do that because I want to have just a little bit of extra glue surface when I glue the 2 halves of this Megladon shark tooth together. So that'll give me just a little bit of extra glue surface there along the edges. So I'm going to leave that flange there. Another thing I like to do is I like to name my models in such a way that it includes the original width and height dimensions. So if I select this vector here, which is actually the size of the finished model after it's glued together, it'll be sanded, this flange will be sanded off, and this will be the actual size of the model. So I can see here that the width is 7.57, so I'll just call it 7.6, and the height is 9.17, so I'll call that 9.2, just round that up a little bit. So I'm going to go over here, and where I have final model, I'm going to click rename, and I'll input, I'll just call that Megladon tooth 76 by 92. So when I glance at that later on down the road, I can tell, okay, that was 7.6 inches by 9.2 inches. And I know it's not exact, but that's close enough. That gives me an idea what that original model size was. So another thing I like to do is go ahead and export my models into 3D format. So if I ever lose this original file, at least I've got the model. So I'm going to go ahead and right click, and I'll export this as 3D clip art. That's the Vectric native format. And that will automatically name the 3D clip with the same name that I had here for the model. So I've got a 3D models directory, and I'm going to go ahead and save that there. Now I could also export this model as a grayscale, or I could export it as an STL format or an OBJ format, but for now I'm just going to use the Vectric format. So I've got that 3D clip format available for use for any other projects in the future. Okay, so the next step that we'll do is we'll go ahead and do our final layout and set up the 2 halves of the shark tooth and generate the toolpaths and get it ready for CNC machining. All right, let's set up the toolpaths, at least prepare for that. And first of all, I want to put in some tabs, both on the bottom and the top of this tooth. Now, the reason I'm putting in manual tabs is because this is a pierced carving. We're going to carve this out of 3/4 inch thick material, and the model itself is 3/4 of an inch. So it's going to carve all the way through around the perimeter of this model. So in order to have that held in, assuming we don't have a vacuum table, which I do not have, we're going to need some tabs to hold that piece in. So we do have in the clip art, we've got a 3D tabs section, and we've got a variety of different tabs we can choose from. Let me choose a wave tab. Let's bring that over. Those will be for the top, and then I want a flat one. Let's see, how about this rectangular one for the bottom? Okay, and let's go back to the drawing tab. Now I want to go to split view so we can see what's happening in both the 3D and the 2D view. So right now I've got this tab that's going to go somewhere along this bottom area here, and let me just zoom in. That tab is set to merge, and so it's merging with the model, but I want it to not cover up these small details of the teeth or the serrations on the tooth there on the edge. So I want this tab to be about the same thickness as this flange here. So it looks to be about 0.73 of an inch thick. So 0.75 minus 0.73 equals 0.02. So I'm going to go ahead and make the thickness of this tab to be 0.02. Okay, and it looks like I can go a little bit thicker than that. I want it to be about the same level as this edge around here. So let's go 0.025. Okay, that's close. Let me try 0.0255. Okay, that looks good. All right, so we got a tab set there. And we'll just go ahead and click on this tab and press Control Shift H on the keyboard to make a copy to the other side. Okay, that looks good. And we'll do the same thing with this top tab. Now I'll go ahead and rotate this a little bit. And I'll place it on an area where it's not going to be too difficult to sand off after the carve is made. Now this one I don't care about it being flat with this bottom flange because it'll be easier to sand off anyway with this rounded fatter area. Okay, so I'll go ahead and select this, press Control Shift H, which makes a duplicate copy in horizontal. And it looks like I might want to tuck this one in just a little bit more. Okay, and let's see how tall that is. Okay, it's 1/8 of an inch tall, so that should be okay. All right. Now, if you want to, just to keep things organized, you can place these tabs on another level, its own level. And I'll rename this tabs, T-A-B-S, tabs, and I'll make this tab level combined mode of merge. And I'll select all these tabs, move them out of that finished model level, and place them on their own level. Okay. That takes care of placing the tabs for the preparation of setting up our toolpaths. Now before we move on, I want to create a vector boundary both for the finishing bit and the roughing bit. Roughing bit's going to be a 1/4 inch flat end mill, and so I want to offset this vector by, oh, it's already set, 0.26, 0.26. It's a little bit over the diameter of that roughing bit. Then I also want to create another offset vector of 1/8 of an inch, 0.125. That will be for the finishing bit, which is I'm going to use a 1/8 inch diameter tapered ball nose. And so we'll use those as our vector boundaries for both the roughing and the finishing toolpaths. Okay, let's set up the toolpaths. I'll just enlarge that window a little bit and press F to fill that window and lock this toolpath panel in place. The first thing I want to do is select my material setup. And I've got the XY data currently in the middle. That was when I was in the design mode. I want that in the lower left corner. That's just my preference. You can put it where you want. And I do want to set the Z0 at the machine bed. That's because this is a pierced carve, and I want this model to come out to be the exact thickness that I set it at, which is 3/4 of an inch. Our material thickness is set at 3/4 of an inch also. So by setting this machine bed for the Z0, that assures that it's referencing the bottom of the material, so when it carves, it's going to come out exactly right at that 3/4 inch thickness. Now your material needs to be at least this 0.75 thickness to accommodate the model, but it can be a little bit more. My material is actually a little bit more. It's 0.765. So by setting it at the machine bed, it's going to carve away the waste that's above that 0.75 inch thickness automatically. And so the end model will come out the correct thickness. Okay, let's set up our roughing toolpath. I'll select my roughing downcut end mill, and I'm wanting to use a selected vector, so I'm selecting this one that we offset 0.26, which is a little bit more than the diameter of that 1/4 inch bit. Let me check my settings here. I've got a pass depth of 1/4 of an inch. That's good. Step over 76%. RPM's okay. Feed rate, plunge rate, those are okay, so I'll just click all right. And I want to add a slight machining allowance. That's a sort of a skin over the entire model that's left behind for the finishing pass to remove. I don't need any boundary offset because I'm already using an offset boundary here. And I want to raster the roughing pass with the grain. The grain is going up and down in Y, so I want that raster direction along Y. And here I'll just type in 0.25 inch downcut end mill, DCEM, and calculate. Okay, let me preview that for us. So it's going to make 3 passes. Each pass is at 1/4 inch deep. Last one's a little bit less than that because it's not going all the way through the material. All right, that looks good. And now we'll set up the finishing tool path. I'm selecting an 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. And I'll just check my settings here. I've got a step over of 8%. That's good. Spindle speed 12,000. I'm going to up that to 18,000. That's the maximum of my spindle. Feed rate 3 inches per second, plunge rate 2 inches per second. That's good. It'll actually never reach those speeds because of the Z movement up and down, but when it can, it'll go as fast as it can up to this 3 and 2 inches per second. So I'll click OK. And again, I want to use this selected boundary, so I'll select that option here and select this boundary that's offset 1/8 of an inch. And I've got raster strategy and raster angle at 90 degrees. That means it's going to raster in the Y again. And I'll just type in 0.125 inch TBN, tapered ball nose, and calculate that. It'll take a little longer to calculate the finishing pass because it's got such a low step over, 8%. Okay, now we can preview the finished tool path. And as you can see, it's got these little kind of funny black lines there. That just shows you that it's a pierced carve. It's actually that tip of that ball nose is breaking the bottom surface of the material here and there, and that's what's represented in this preview. There'll be some of this material left behind because it's not a flat end mill, it's a ball nose, so not all of that ball nose is going to go completely through the material, but this little sort of onion skin all the way around will help hold that in addition to, we got the 2 tabs at the top and the 2 flat tabs at the bottom, although it's kind of hard to see, but there they are. I just zoomed in, and let me just show you the back side. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but if you hold down the Shift key and click on, this is the Z view. So if I hold down Shift, it's going to flip over to the back side. Now the back side is pretty dark, but if you want to see what that looks like, you can select the Light Follows Viewer, and you can get a better idea what that looks like from the back. Now if I click that again, it goes back to our front view, and I'll turn off the Light Follows Viewer so it's not quite so bright. So that holds true for any of these views. If you have a side view like this, of course we can't really tell because we're looking at the side of a board, but if you have a side view and you hold down Shift, it'll actually flip over to the other side. Same with the end view. Click it one time, hold down Shift, click it again, and it goes to the other end. So a little tip for you there. All right, so it looks like that we're good on our Toolpaths. Let me go back into that preview. That's looking good. Now if you want to, you can kind of check what the estimate of time is, and this little clock here that shows us how long the roughing and finishing is going to take. Now these are only estimates, and it depends on the scale factor that you choose. I know from experience in keeping track of time over many projects, hundreds of projects, that my scale factor for a 3D model is approximately 2.4. So I know that that estimate's going to be pretty close. So I got a total machining time of about an hour and a half, and that's just the scale factor. It varies from machine to machine, so it depends on your machine. But you can only get a close estimate by keeping track of time on several jobs and then typing in that scale factor for a good estimate. Okay. Now we'll go into creating the final layout. Okay, let's close the Toolpath panel and go back into our 2D view. Now I've got my snap to geometry and the smart snapping turned on. I'm just going to draw a guideline here for the material size, which is currently 9 inches wide and 11 inches tall. So that snapping helped me draw that rectangle the exact size. So I'll close that, and you'll see in a second here how that helps me. Okay, so I'm going to want to have 2 of these shark teeth because we're going to carve 2 halves and glue them together. So I'm going to put that on one board. You want the grain direction to go along the length of the tooth. And so I'm going to go in here and select my job setup. Width is okay, 9 inches, but I need to increase the height from 11 inches to 22 inches. So I'll type that in, and you see the screen update. Click OK. All right, now what I want to do, and here's where this box comes in handy, I want to move this up to the top of this material. So I'm just dragging and snapping on that corner so it snaps right to the material. And I want to make a copy of this upside down so that the tips line up with each other here. So easy way to do that is just to have everything selected and press Control Shift V. That creates a vertical copy, inverted. There it is. So you see that helped me align that perfectly with that board, just having that guide. And speaking of guides, I'm going to go ahead and select both of those and right click and move that to a new layer. I'll just call it Guides. And typically I'll give it a light blue color. There we go. And also I want to just draw a couple items here, a square, a 1 inch square, and a 0.3 inch diameter circle. And I want to align both of those centered with each other. And I'll also group them by pressing G. Sorry about that. And I'm just dragging that to this corner. I'll press Control Shift H, and that gives me that horizontal copy. And now I'll do Control Shift V, and that'll give it in the bottom right corner. Control Shift H makes another copy to the other corner. I should have, before I did that, selected that and put it on the guide layer. I'll do that now. Just select all those and move to Layer, Guides. And it looks like that I might want to have a couple screw hold downs here in the middle too. So I'll just make a copy of this. I'll just hold down Control and Alt, and I'll drag this up to the center, and that snaps. Make another copy on the other side, Control Shift H, and there I've got all my hold downs. So that pretty much takes care of our layout. Now I do need to create the toolpaths for both of these teeth, because currently, as you know, we've only got the toolpath set up for one. But before I do that, I'm taking a look at where this is sitting, and that's a little too close for the hold downs for me. So I want to nudge both of these shark teeth a little bit closer to the middle and away from the top and bottom edge here. So I'm going to hit F4, the function key, F4. That brings up my snapping options, but what I'm after here is the fixed nudge distance. Now, I can probably nudge those a 1/4 of an inch. That'd be all right, but let me try 0.3, and I'll select all of that, holding down Control, Shift, and hitting the down arrow on my keyboard. That nudges that 0.3 of an inch, and I'll do the same thing with this bottom one. Control, Shift, up arrow. Okay, so that has gotten this well away from where I'm going to use my screw hold downs. Okay, let's go into the toolpaths again. Now, I won't get into layer associations for toolpaths at this point. I'll just go ahead and do these things manually, but be aware there's a number of different ways you can toolpath and streamline things. But I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at which vector needs to be selected for each function. I've got a roughing and a finish. So we're on the roughing. I can see this outline, the farthest outline out from the tooth is the roughing. So I'll Shift, select the other one, calculate. That'll calculate for both. Okay, that's done. And we'll go to the finish toolpath. Sorry, let me do that again. Finish toolpath. And go into that menu. Select the finish toolpath vector, which is the second one in. Click calculate. So that's calculating the finish for both of those now. Okay, and we'll just go ahead and preview all toolpaths just to make sure that everything looks like it's supposed to. Anytime you make changes to layout or move things around, you have to recalculate the toolpaths just to be sure that everything's coming out as expected and you haven't miscalculated or forgotten to select something. Okay, that looks pretty good, although I'm wondering about these blank spots here. So I'm just going to double check my material setup, make sure I haven't got a gap in there. Nope, that's good. We're good. Well, it doesn't hurt to double check. Click cancel and go back to that preview. And that's what it's going to look like when it's actually carved on the CNC machine. Okay, just quickly back to the 2D view. One thing I like to do for myself is to create myself notes and an on-screen display that reminds me where to set the Z0 and also the grain direction for the board. So I copied this from a previous project where I notated that, so I'll just paste it in. So I've got this on-screen reminder, set Z0 to bottom of material and the grain direction showing in line with the teeth here. Now, if I needed to edit this for any reason, I can just select that text, go into the text editor, and make any edits I want. Like maybe you want to say bottom or small board surface. There we go. And we'll just nudge that up a little bit. So it's set Z0 to bottom material, which is the spoil board surface, and the grain direction goes vertically. Okay, let's go back into the Toolpaths tab. I'll lock that in place, and I'll go to my 3D view. And I want to make my toolpaths visible. And then I want to, in my case, save all of my toolpaths to one file because my post processor supports that type of choice. You can also take advantage of either of these other choices, whatever's most suitable for your machine and your post processor. In my case, I'm saving to a ShopBot with one file for all the toolpaths. So I'll click on Save Toolpaths, and that'll open up a folder I've got for SB Toolpaths, for ShopBot Toolpaths, and then I can give my toolpaths a name. And I'll just call it Shark Tooth and save. Okay, we're ready to go out to the shop and run this on the CNC. Okay, I've mixed up a batch of my favorite sealer, and that's 1 part denatured alcohol mixed with 1 part of the Zinsser Bullseye Seal Coat, which is just a 100% de-waxed shellac. So 1 part to 1 part, and then I'll apply this thinned coat, seal coat, over the shark tooth, and that's to stiffen up any remaining fuzzies that are left on this carve. Once I finish that second sanding, I'll go ahead and take a look at it and see if I need to apply another coat, raise any more fuzzies, and do some more sanding before we apply the final finish coats. Alright, after 2 coats of the thinned seal coat and sanding between coats, I'm applying a single coat of straight seal coat, straight from the can, not diluted. And that'll give me my final seal to the wood before I apply the final finish. Okay, after the last full strength seal coat was dry, I went ahead and sanded overall. And then I decided I wanted to just make this tooth area here, the ivory of the tooth, just a little bit smoother. And so I went ahead and coated it with a few coats of the gloss crystal clear Krylon. And I just held it in place and just sprayed, the tooth area like that. So I've applied maybe, 3 or 4 light coats, and then I'll follow that up probably with a satin or a flat. But I just wanted to make this tooth a little bit smoother. I'm not concerned at all about this textured area, but I'll let this dry before I proceed with the rest of the finish, and we'll continue on from there.
Okay, the seal is dry on both sides. I went ahead and applied light coats of flat Krylon just to give it bite for this paint. So I've gathered up a few materials. I've got various paint colors that I think I'm going to use, and I've printed out a copy of the original shark tooth reference photo just so that it gives me a guide to applying these paints. Now, it won't be exact. I think I'm going to go ahead and leave this ivory part of the tooth the natural color, wood color, and then I'll glaze that over later, but primarily I'm going to be focusing on just this texture part here. So I've got a lot of different acrylic craft paints picked out. These are the primary colors I think I'm going to use. I probably won't use all of them. Then I've got some other colors in the wings in case I want to mix up a custom color somehow. So, all right, looking at my reference photo, it looks like that we've got a fairly dark background with some highlights there. So I've squirted out some black and gray and some of this brown. And I'm just going to apply these darker colors just like this. Now I'll do this for both sides. You can see I'm just sort of doing a random pattern here. Now when I get down here, I'll be a little more careful with the separating line from the tooth itself. Okay, I'll finish this up and come back. Alright, as you can see, I've painted both sides with just a combination of different darker colors and a touch of light. Now while this paint is still a little bit damp, it's not fully dry, I'm going to dip a paper towel in some water and carefully wipe off some of this paint here. That will help reveal more of the underlying texture. Of course, I'm going to apply a glaze over everything after this is done, but I just want to reveal some of this texture here by wiping off the paint off of the high areas of this texture. Now, if you get a little bit of smudge down here, no worries because this is all sealed. You can take a damp cloth and wipe that off as well. So as you can see, it's starting to reveal that texture a lot nicer by wiping that off the high spots. I'll do the same thing on the back side. Alright, this is dry enough to proceed with the next step, and I've swapped out my old plate where I was using the different colors, the darker colors to mix, and so I'm just taking a light brown, and what I'm trying to do is I'm looking at this reference photo, and although I'm not trying to replicate this exactly, I like the sort of a reddish brown highlights here, so I'm going to see if I can replicate that with the dry brush technique. So I'm going to take some brown, a little bit of orange, some red. Let's see if I can come up with a brownish reddish color here. The paint's all dry on the shark tooth, and I'm in the process of applying the final clear coats. I'm using this Krylon Spray Gloss Crystal Clear. I'm just applying several light coats, and of course I'll do that to both sides.
Well, that's it, folks. That wraps up this session for creating a Megladon shark tooth fossil. These techniques can be applied for creating all types of cool models. All it takes is a little practice, but the steps are the same. Create a component from a bitmap photo, then create your underlying shapes. Enjoy the rest of Vectric's worldwide user group meeting. I hope you've picked up some tips and inspiration from this session. Happy carving!